With millions of viewers and a seven-figure salary, you could be sitting at the anchor desk of America's most popular cable news network 1 minute. The next instant, you're nowhere to be found. Fox News simply announced their separation in a single icy statement with no explanation or farewell. Separating from Kimberly Guilfoyle. The quiet was deafening to someone whose career depended on being heard. Why would a network be so desperate as to spend more than $4 million to make someone vanish? The reality of Kimberly Guilfoyle's abrupt departure from Fox News exposes a more sinister aspect of media dominance and demonstrates how, when the cameras stop rolling, a career can suddenly fall apart. You must first comprehend the heights to which Kimberly Guilfoyle had ascended before we can go into the actual events that transpired behind those Fox News doors. Because it gets harder to fall the higher you go. San Francisco, 1969. At the age of 11, a young girl loses her mother to leukemia. And she would be motivated for decades by that tragedy. Kimberly Guilfoyle did not come from a wealthy family. She was shaped by suffering. She learned something from that early loss that most people never learn. Everything you love can disappear in an instant. In the Mission District, her Puerto Rican mother and her Irish immigrant father, who worked in construction, had established a modest life. However, young Kimberly lost her mother to cancer. Learned that stability was a myth. For the rest of her life, this insight would influence every choice she made. While most of her peers were still deciding what they wanted to do with their lives, she turned that dread into desire and clawed her way through law school. As they grew older, the courtroom evolved into her initial phase. She acquired a unique talent while working as a prosecutor in Los Angeles and subsequently San Francisco, the capacity to humanize complicated cases. She was not a case argumentist. Jurors were unable to ignore the story she told. But this is where the majority of folks get the tale incorrectly. They believe that she made a planned decision to switch from law to television. The real story is much more fascinating. When she appeared on camera for the first time as a legal analyst in 2000, she was merely attempting to pay the bills. Gavin Newsom and she were divorcing. She wanted a change of pace because her legal profession had reached its zenith. Her on-screen appearance was unexpectedly natural. Other legal professionals, meanwhile, seemed to be reading from. Kimberly talked as though she were conversing with a buddy about textbooks. She could explain even the most complicated court cases in a way your grandmother could comprehend. And she did it with such assurance that the audience had total faith in her. In 2004, Court TV had provided a standard slot on each side of her. This was no civil legal conversation. This was blood sport on television. Kimberly was also a born gladiator. She had the ability to passionately advocate both sides of an issue, which would help her in the partisan conflicts too. Come on. However, Fox News was the one that really made a difference. Kimberly felt this was her chance to play in the major leagues when they contacted in 2006. She rose quickly at Fox. She had obtained the ultimate reward, a sought-after. Exactly on the 5. For her abilities, the format was ideal. She was no longer merely offering legal analysis. She was delving deeply into contentious political discussions and providing incisive analysis on everything from cultural concerns to foreign policy. By the middle of the 2000s, Kimberly Guilfoyle had accomplished something that most TV personalities could only imagine. She was now essential. Her pay was commensurate with her worth. 7 figures. The type of money that has significant impact and significant anticipations. She was more than just a host on Fox News. She was a brand in her own right. But there are two sides to success on television. You are under more scrutiny the higher your profile. Someone extremely close to Kimberly was keeping a tight eye on her. Someone who was going to make all the difference. Kimberly Guilfoyle's July 2018 began like every other month. She was at the top of her game, co-hosting The 5 for millions of people and inspiring admiration from co-workers and anxiety from political rivals. However, something occurred that would rock the media landscape, and the official narrative is completely nonsensical. Fox News issued a statement that was both stunning and succinct. A single sentence declaring they had broken up with her. No justification, no goodbye remembrance, and no recognition of her years of devotion. The quiet was deafening to a woman who had worked for more than 10 years to turn Fox's afternoon programming into a ratings powerhouse. If you've spent a lot of time watching the media, recognize that this is not how high-profile departures occur. Even in shame, Bill O'Reilly's departure from Fox generated headlines and analysis. It was a media circus when Megyn Kelly left for NBC. However, Kimberly Guilfoyle just disappeared. It was a clear and striking contrast. Despite the controversies, O'Reilly had a farewell segment that acknowledged his efforts. Public statements wishing Kelly well were given to her. Guilfoyle received a press statement from the company that said, like a termination notice. The official story was clean and well organized. Kimberly had made the decision to leave television in order to concentrate on President Trump's 2020 campaign and other political endeavors. On paper, it made sense. She has always been involved in politics. She was well connected in Republican circles, and working on campaigns gave her the kind of prominent platform she desired. Here's what didn't stack up, though. Time, procedure, and history. The timing was strange to start. The 2020 election was more than 2 years away, in July 2018. Usually, major campaign positions don't come up so long in advance. Secondly, the procedure was unheard of. Kimberly-caliber Fox personalities don't go away overnight. Third, at what time? Was Fox ever so keen to let go of one of its biggest stars without making a major public fuss? In the past, the network had battled to retain much less valuable individuals. The choice to let Guilfoyle go so readily implied that there was another factor at play. Inside days, the gossip began to circulate. Insiders in the media started chatting about internal and behind-the-scenes troubles. What didn't happen, however, was possibly the most significant element. Kimberly, who had made her name as an opinionated person, hardly mentioned her departure. For someone, this sudden unwillingness to mention her leaving was a huge warning signal for someone who had never shied away from confrontation. She started posting less frequently and generically on social media. Her public remarks were well-planned and succinct. The rapidity of her shift to political work was also suspect. In a matter of weeks, Kimberly was attending Trump rallies, funding Republican candidates, and devoting herself to campaign activities with an almost desperate zeal. She seemed to be attempting to go by so fast that nobody would have chanced to make awkward inquiries. In the meantime, Fox News proceeded with painstaking accuracy. Without a pause, the five went on. There were sentimental montages, no reference to her role in the network's success, and no recognition that one of its biggest stars had just disappeared. Dedicated observers found this erasure startling. They were witnessing Kimberly's characteristically fervent commentary one day when she abruptly disappeared the next. Speculation swiftly filled the gap left by the lack of explanation, but the network provided none. What we didn't know was that a completely different story was being recorded in 2,000 business boardrooms and legal offices while Kimberly was appearing in public and establishing her new political career. One that would eventually come to light and demonstrate the extent to which Fox News was prepared to go in order to suppress certain stories. For many years, business confidentiality agreements and well-managed public relations concealed the true cause for Kimberly Guilfoyle's resignation. Then, in October 2020, an investigative article in The New Yorker broke the meticulously crafted story and exposed a startling reality that altered everything we believed we were aware of her departure. The narrative started with a young woman who had accepted what appeared to be her ideal position as an assistant to one of the greatest names on Fox News. Instead, she was left with a nightmare that would follow her around for years. As stated by The New. According to Yorker's story, months after Kimberly Guilfoyle had already quit the network, this assistant filed a 42-page, secret complaint against her in November 2018. Time was of the essence. It indicated that Fox News has been handling grave internal accusations while openly preserving that she left voluntarily and in good terms. Both the breadth and the precision of the accusations made in that lawsuit were startling. Sources with knowledge of the case said that the assistant claimed Guilfoyle had often harassed her at work, mistreatment that much above what could be regarded as typical professional conduct. This went beyond inconsiderate remarks and sporadic transgressions of boundaries. The accusations depicted a person who abused her authority to establish a hostile workplace that crossed every possible professional conduct boundary. According to the assistant, she was regularly forced to work at Guilfoyle's New York apartment while the Fox personality flaunted herself, which made the young woman feel imprisoned and uneasy but unable to quit without jeopardizing her job. The claims that Guilfoyle would show her assistant pictures of men's genitalia from males she had dated were even more unsettling. These were not chance observations. They were intentional acts intended to control and degrade. Additionally, the assistant claimed that Guilfoyle talked endlessly about her life, making her employee listen to explicit details that had nothing to do with work but were all about asserting authority. Guilfoyle allegedly went beyond verbal harassment to make physical demands, according to the complaint. The alleged pattern of behavior went beyond harassment to include more widespread workplace abuse. According to the accusation, Guilfoyle effectively asked her helper to shoot Uta herself in order to advance in her career by encouraging her to have affairs with influential and wealthy men. In order to eliminate any chance of privacy or professional boundaries, she allegedly insisted that her assistant share rooms when on business trips. These were not one-off events. The accusations detailed an ongoing pattern of objective, inappropriate, and demeaning behavior. Behavior broke all professional conduct standards and made the assistant's job intolerable. The way the assistant attempted to manage the situation is what makes this story even more unsettling. In the hopes that a discussion might fix the issues, she first tried to address these concerns informally. She had no intention of ruining anyone's career. All she wanted was to perform her duties without having to put up with harassment that no worker should have to undergo. She attempted to work within the system after informal attempts failed, hoping that the Human Resources Department at Fox News could handle the matter in a professional capacity. However, it is said that things worsened when the assistant ultimately decided she needed to take official action. The New Yorker reported that Guilfoyle allegedly sought to obstruct the probe and even tried to buy off the assistant so she wouldn't give information to the attorneys Fox News had hired. The ensuing investigation was costly and extensive. Fox News engaged a third-party legal firm to manage the matter, bringing in professionals with experience in matters involving workplace harassment. During this months-long procedure, the public was unaware of what was taking place. Fox kept up the lie that Kimball's departure had been voluntary even as they dealt with grave internal accusations. Not only was the settlement struck by Fox News noteworthy, it was also astounding. Several stories claim that the network compensated the helper almost $4 million to fix the problem. $4 million. For comparison, that is more than the majority of Americans will make in their lifetimes, paid to settle a single job grievance. This settlement was not a nuisance. This type of funding indicates that Fox News took these accusations seriously and wished to keep the information private. Strict secrecy agreements that forbade the assistant from ever talking about the accusations, the inquiry, or the settlement were attached to the money. The settlement's size begs the uneasy question of what Fox News management thought had truly transpired. Millions of dollars are not spent by businesses to settle pointless complaints. This money was used to purchase total quiet regarding claims that, evidently, the network deemed it harmful enough to warrant a significant financial investment. Kimberly, meantime, was launching a completely new political action career. Her move to Trump's campaign was intensely personal as well as professional. She was in a relationship, Donald Trump Jr., which provided her with a platform that was comparable to her television job in terms of visibility and power, as well as access to the highest echelons of Republican politics. Here's what's interesting, though. For someone who had made a name for herself by speaking out and combative, she remarkably stopped talking on one particular subject. During public appearances, rallies, and interviews, Kimberly would talk about nearly anything besides leaving Fox News. Her responses to questions from reporters over her departure were strangely contrived. She would talk about how she wanted to work in politics, how she was excited about new challenges, and how much she valued her time at Fox, but she never gave any specifics, never clarified the time frame, and never mentioned how abrupt her departure was. For somebody who had never avoided controversy, this unexpected. It was telling that she was reluctant to talk about her own work history. It implied that there were elements of her leaving that were too risky to discuss in public. There were several reasons behind the quiet. It gave her authority over the story. It safeguarded her new connections in Republican politics, her career transfer, and, above all, Fox News. The network was allowed to proceed without much public attention even after spending millions to resolve grave accusations. Fox News managed the whole thing with surgical accuracy. They paid to guarantee silence, eliminated a potentially troublesome personality, and carried on with their programs uninterrupted. The network escaped the kind of protracted scandal that had dogged them in past years, and The Five continued to be a ratings hit. For the helper, a settlement promised both permanent silence and financial stability. She had come out with grave claims of mistreatment at work. Even though she was paid well, she was never allowed to share her tale in public. In 2020, when the New Yorker story was eventually published, it exposed not only the purported events but also the extent to which influential organizations will go to preserve their image and the amount of money they are prepared to spend to buy silence. Kimberly later declared in public that she had never committed any form of workplace misbehavior after her attorneys made forceful denials. However, Kimberly remained silent about the details even after the story was made public. She gave a general denial of the accusations, but she avoided getting into specifics, offered no other justifications for her departure, and failed to explain why Fox News would spend millions to settle baseless charges. Kimberly Guilfoyle was remarkably disciplined in maintaining her public character for years following the New Yorker investigation. She raised millions for Republican candidates, made appearances at rallies, and developed a new persona as a political power broker. However, behind the surface, there was another taking place. After years of carefully crafted public pronouncements, Kimberly finally disclosed the real cost of her retirement from Fox News at the age of 55 in a rare moment of unguarded honesty. Even seasoned political analysts were taken aback by her shocking admission during a conversation. All those who heard it. She was wrecked by the controversy. The statements were more powerful than any business statement, legal brief, or public denial. Considering that she had portrayed strength, authority, and unwavering confidence throughout her career, her acknowledgement of it was unprecedentedly vulnerable. She talked about how, in a few short days, she lost everything she had worked for. Erasure, with no defense or explanation. 20 years of establishing a profession, forming connections, and winning audiences' trust were all lost. All night. This was not the self-assured, aggressive Kimberly that viewers were accustomed to from political rallies and television. This person was struggling with the fact that a single accusation, no matter how true, might instantly wipe out decades of professional success. She spoke about how individuals behave as though you can simply forget about them, rewrite your own history, and move on. They don't forget though. They never do. The controversy is mentioned in each introduction. Each profile makes reference to the accusations. Phrases like, despite her past troubles, are used to qualify every triumph. The admission exposed something that her high-profile relationships, fundraising accomplishments, and political success had all failed to conceal. But no amount of outside approval could erase the profound psychological wounds caused by the affair. She explained how she went from being respected and looked up to becoming a name that people gossip about. It was more than just losing one's job. It was becoming less of a person. Losing that basis alters everything when your entire identity has been based on professional accomplishment and being regarded as capable and accomplished. She thought about putting her all into Fox News. Her enthusiasm, her thoughts, and her devotion. She contributed to building shows, attracted viewers, generated revenue, and was gone as soon as it became inconvenient or someone made accusations. Nothing but silence, no farewells, no second chances, no chance to defend herself. There was no mistaking the fury, which was the result of years of political. There had been no waning of success. She never really left the shadow of her Fox News exit, even after establishing a new job, falling in love, and staying in the spotlight. Her admissions remarks regarding the nature of power in the media sector were arguably its most illuminating aspects. for all of her accomplishments, her impact, and her 7-foot figure. Nevertheless, she had learned that everything might vanish in an instant on the basis of accusations that could never be meaningfully confirmed or refuted. She explained that her worst burden had been that quiet. It had been with her during every phase of her rebirth, every appearance in public, and every news story. That was determined to keep the story alive. When a part of you is constantly wondering what people know or believe they know, you can't truly move forward. The disclosure also demonstrated how scandal puts public personalities in a difficult position. Don't deny too strongly. And you appear to be guilty. If you don't say anything, people will assume the worst. When you attempt to move on, you are accused of evading responsibility. There is no way to be fully vindicated or completely redeemed. She admitted that she would never be the same person she was before this incident, even though she had created something new, discovered a new purpose, a new love, and new ways to make a difference. No amount of achievement could restore the part of her that perished in that quiet. A frightening question is raised by her reflection. That goes well beyond her own circumstance. How would you defend your reputation if everything you've worked so hard to build could be destroyed in a single moment, accusation, or choice? How can a negative be proven? How do you protect yourself against rumors? It's a pertinent subject in a time when charges made on social media have the power to ruin careers, when accusations spread more quickly than facts, and when the rules of the court of public opinion diverge from those of the legal system. Modern scandal has harsh, unforgiving mathematics. Moments of controversy have the power to overshadow decades of accomplishment. Although Kimberly Guilfoyle is still a well-known figure in Republican politics today, she will always be associated with the incident that put an end to her media career. Despite receiving a sizable salary, the assistant is nevertheless subject to confidentiality agreements that forbid, preventing her from ever sharing her perspective. Without recognizing the consequences of their silence, Fox News continued on. It was costly, severe, and harmful enough that a major news network was willing to spend millions to keep it secret, regardless of the full truth of what transpired behind those Fox News doors. The true lesson isn't always about innocence or guilt. In a field that was founded on the promise of speaking the truth, it's about power, responsibility, and the cost of remaining silent.